Welcome. I just wanted to let everybody know we'll be starting in just another minute or so. So welcome into the webinar for this afternoon. So as people are coming in, you are coming in with your video and microphones off because of the webinar, but you will have the opportunity to write in the chat and the Q&A. We'll get started in just another minute. Well, it looks like we have quite a few people, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome. This is an exciting time for us to kick off the big CRIMSI pilot. I'm so excited to have you here today. A couple reminders before we get started. You are coming in on mute and with your videos off with the webinar, but we will be able to see your chats and any questions that you ask in Q&A. We are recording the session, so we will be publishing the recording and sending that out for any participants who are unable to attend. So let's get started. We have a lot of exciting information and want to make sure that we honor your time on a Friday afternoon, so that I know all of you are feeling cold here in Texas, but also some urgency in thinking through the next steps with CRIMSI. For today, we're going to focus on these three main objectives, just really an introduction, welcoming to the community, an overview of some goals, commitments, and benefits of being part of this elite group here in Texas. And then third, how we can help set you up for success so that you are ready and prepared to roll out your pilot units. Very exciting. We have 86 districts and 182 campuses that are involved in working together. So I hope that we begin to think of ourselves as a mini community across the state of Texas, united and working through some very exciting Texas home learning module or units, and thinking through best ways to support teachers and leaders, and of course our students in success with instruction during this very challenging time. So very exciting group to be a part of. Just want to share a little bit of who's around you and how many people might be doing something similar to what you've selected to do. We currently have 45 pre-K sections or campuses that are going to be rolling out pre-K, 61 involved in K through 5 math, 41 participants in 6 through 12 Math with Carnegie Learning, the Texas Math Solution. We have 32 campuses working with K-5 Amplify, Reading Language Arts. Some of that English, some of that both, working with skills. We have 12 schools working primarily with the K2 Amplify skills. We have 25 middle school, 6 through 8, reading language arts people and campuses involved with Amplify, 16 high schools using 9 through 12 Odell, and 37, this is my former love of science, 37 campuses working to pilot PhD science. So a lot of exciting things. And you can see that there are many people also in the state that will be working alongside colleagues. Even if you are the lone person in your school, you're not alone as part of this pilot community. Just some quick introductions. My name is Melissa Lautenschlager. I'm the Director of Instructional Materials and Implementation here at the Texas Education Agency, but a former high school science teacher, math and science coordinator for a few different districts, and worked with a large district for curriculum and instruction, instructional coaching, and working with leadership. I'm also a proud mom of 3 students and 2 of them are currently in the K-12. Going through this interesting time alongside of you, plus a new college student. And then my husband is also a teacher. And so very committed to the work that we're doing at the agency to support schools in thinking through solutions for their students during this time. I think these are amazing materials and really address some needs that we have always had and some new ones. So very excited to be here. I'm gonna kick it over to Laura Cooper to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here to join in with the webinar today. I'm new to TEA and serving in the role to support the pilot initiative. I am coming from the San Antonio area where I've worked the last 20 years in public education, all in Texas schools. I've served as a social studies teacher in middle school and high school. I was a K-12 curriculum coordinator and director and have served as a middle school and high school principal. And so now in this new role, I'm really excited about the work around Texas home learning and the opportunity to support teachers, leaders, and principals and districts all around the state of Texas.
Thanks, Laura. We're very happy to have Laura here on joining the team and here to support everyone. Behind the scenes, we do have Kristen Hull as Associate Commissioner of Instructional Strategy and doing some amazing work to support and leading this pilot across the state as well. And then we are partnered today with UPD Consulting, and we have a few people on the call that will be here as our partner for you and your planning and logistical needs as we help you prepare for the pilot. And so that is to make sure that you have all the information you need, as well as signed up for the professional development and a go-to to ensure that all of your pre-piloting needs are met. So we have Dr. Vincent Baxter, Rena Nazar, and Jason Graham, who are working diligently with us to make sure you have what you need. I'm going to jump right into just a quick few things on the overview. I know some of you, or most of you, have probably already seen this, so we'll spend just a little bit of time as some reminders, and then we'll jump into really setting you up for success. So the pilot, the CRIMSI pilot, the objectives here really truly are to support teachers in piloting high quality instructional materials developed for in-person and remote learning. So depending on what your specific situation is, the materials are going to support both in-person and remote learning. And we have the team and the publishers behind here to make sure that you have what you need so that you're able to work with students using these materials. We're creating more opportunities for students experiencing high learning loss due to COVID. What's especially important about the Texas Home Learning materials is they have been designed to ensure equity and continuity in learning. So it allows for students that may be learning virtually and students in the classroom to have a very equitable experience and make sure that they are getting what they need to support or to mitigate that learning loss that we're seeing, as well as support with specific skills and content knowledge to be prepared as they are assessed at the end of the year and moving on to next school year. And then we're providing professional learning support to test freely available resources. So teachers have additional training, and you have some coaching that is coming along with this to make sure that as you look at the Texas Home Learning materials, you're understanding and are able to use to the most capacity that they are made to do. So looking at this, CRIMSI, if you remember, it provides districts and schools with access to free planning, implementation. We have stipend for the pilot of these high quality instructional materials that are all freely available on Texas Home Learning. We are working to make sure that we have materials for those recommended units, and we'll talk a little bit more about those in just a minute. I want to just go over, I mentioned all the many of numbers associated with the different products, but just as a reminder, we have multiple products that are involved in this pilot opportunity, and happy to talk more if people need some additional support of adding on to what you were thinking before. As a reminder, I really wanted to spend just a moment about 4 major commitments that are important as a participant in the CRIMSI pilot. The first is onboarding professional learning. So we want to make sure that district leaders, school leaders, coaches, teachers are all participating in the publisher-specific virtual orientation and training sessions to make sure that you have a strong understanding of the materials and are prepared to teach the specific unit. We will be sharing information out as soon as we can about when those training dates are and to help you to register and prepare for the professional development. But that definitely is a huge component in ensuring success with the pilot. The second commitment is this fidelity of implementation. So participating teachers need to implement a minimum of 1 Texas Home Learning unit in entirety for the spring 2021. And so I know you're working to plan when that will happen. And teachers will meet the minimum number of instructional materials, instructional minutes for the specific materials. So according to the different products, we have the minutes that are required for those and making sure that you're able to commit to that. That was all part of the application, so I'm just confirming some of the commitments that you've already made. Additionally, we will have ongoing professional learning in which you'll have and will be participating in professional learning sessions throughout the piloting time to ensure that you have support and coaching for the success of the use of the materials and achievement with your students. And then lastly, an important component of this is the pilot feedback and having teachers and leaders provide not only feedback to the materials themselves, but also giving us information regarding the supports you've received and how the materials helped your students as they were progressing in their content and skill development knowledge. So we'll be looking to you throughout this time, and we'll be supporting in how to make sure that you're able to be signed up and participate fully in this CRIMSI pilot. Before I move on to this next section, I'm just going to take a moment to look at any Q&A or chats that are coming in and try to answer as we go, and then we'll jump into setting you up for success. So just a really quick overview. We are recording this session, and I will be sending that recording out. We can also share with you the PowerPoint slides so you're able to bring that back to your district, campuses, teachers, and leaders. Great. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to jump right into setting you up for success, because we want to go through the details and then provide an opportunity at the end for continued questions and answers. So to begin with, there are 4 main phases in this spring pilot. The first, you're prioritizing the early planning steps. That's going to be happening starting today through, and already was, through early March, that very first week in March. And I'll go through each of these separately. Then we're going to move into this prepare for pilot launch, where you're really looking into the professional learning and diving into the materials and getting yourself set up for the implementation of the pilot. And that will happen throughout the month of March as you go through it. And then we will move into the implement pilot unit and share feedback stage, where you're actually doing your pilot unit. You'll be going through some ongoing professional learning and coaching, and you'll have the opportunity to do periodic feedback. And then at the end of May, once you've gone through your pilot, we will have a reflect and consider if this is the right move for your campus, your students, for a full year adoption. And that will happen near late May, maybe a little bit into June, and then we should start planning for the next year. So to give you a more comprehensive view of what's happening, and I'm going to walk through these stages separately, but we will have quite a few prioritizing early planning steps to happen here. And we'll walk through each of these. We'll come back to this calendar, but you can see there are some quick things that need to happen. And then you'll have an opportunity in here to complete information in return, as well as prepare for the pilot. Your decision on the pilot date is something that you probably have been working on already, but there is flexibility in that depending on the length of your school year and what specific units that you're using. So we're going to start off talking about what are the next steps for setting up for success. And this is in prioritizing early planning steps. I want to start with a very quick ask that will come as a follow-up, which is to confirm if you've decided to use the recommended unit for the particular product and grade level. I will speak a little bit later about understanding what those units are. TEA is committed to supporting with the printing and shipping for all recommended units, and therefore we need a quick turnaround from pilot participants and ensuring that we have your correct shipping address, as well as if you're using the recommended unit. That shipping is, we can send directly to the campus in need, and you will have a Google form that will be able to, I'm going to show you quickly, that'll go out after this kickoff, And that Google form is to give us the shipping information in the recommended, if you're using the recommended unit. So if you'll bear with me for just 1 minute, you'll receive a form that looks like this. It's going to ask some basic information. And yes, we do know that you've shared some of this information already, but the idea here is that we can ship directly to a campus and not having everything shipped to the district main office. So we would need to make sure we have the correct address and correct numbers for recommended units that we are guaranteeing to print and ship your way. You'll fill this out. I'm going to do a quick so you can see. Bear with me. I'll just put in some basic information. You can see all my many addresses popping up. Once you've moved to entering that information, it will ask you then individually about each product. If you select no, it will move to the next product. But if you select yes, you will then be asked to tell us how many student and teacher copies of the materials you need for each campus. Again, we'll be sending this out with some directions, but the idea is that you could ask each campus to complete if needed, and we can get that shipping information quickly from you so that we can ensure those recommended units are at your campus in time for your pilot to start. I'm going to move back to pause for just a moment because I see some questions coming in. Yep, if your campus requires delivery to the district, then you could enter that information. It is entirely up to you where it needs to go. And if you do have some district-specific obligations as to where things are shipped, if you'll let us know what those are in that form. You do need to complete a Google form for each campus, and that will make sure that we have everything you need being shipped to each campus. If you send us the correct numbers, we're going to ship the numbers that you need to your campus. So please send us the numbers that are needed to ensure that if you needed an additional teacher copy for the support there or an instructional coach, you can let us know about that as well. I want to just remind you that this is a very quick ask so that we can ensure that shipping happens quickly. So we'll be sending this out and asking for this Google form to be completed by next Friday. The next part of prioritizing and setting yourself up for success is making sure that you have signed up for the consultancy. So we have many people signed up. We already have 65 sessions set up. But if you have not yet signed up for a consultancy, the opportunity here is for us to help support in your early stages of planning and ensure that you have questions answered that are individual to your district needs. We'll be meeting with district leaders. It's a 30-minute session. If additional time is needed, we can schedule that after. And you did receive this in your acceptance email, but we'll be able to send the link again in a follow-up. Once you've signed up for your consultancy and you've submitted that shipping confirmation, the next part here that'll be really important is you will be sent a data collection form to get much more detailed about finalizing your participating teachers, and you'll receive that and be able to tell us who is doing what. Additionally, you will receive some information about the onboarding professional development that is specific to the products and have an opportunity for signing up. They will have different options available to accommodate varying schedules. So our publishers are finding times that are weekends, in the evenings, some during the day, so that we know there are varying schedules and opportunities so that you can have, it best meets the needs of your situation locally. I mentioned the data collection tool. I'm going to show that to you briefly. It is a more complex tool. I mean, it's easy to answer. It's going to look a little more complex, but you're really just giving us much more detail about your teachers, your learning management system, so that we can ensure you have what you need to access materials digitally, and that we are helping you to get into the onboarding training you need. I'm going to jump really quickly to this to just show you a little more detail about what you'll be receiving. The tool itself, it's going to be an Excel form, and at first it might look like it's complex, but it's actually fairly simple information. You're telling us a little bit about your teachers, making sure we have the correct information on stipends. You'll be giving us some detailed information about your learning environment. All of this is so that we can better understand and cater to the needs of the district and the campuses, and ensure that you have what you need during the pilot. That data collection tool, you'll have a little bit longer to complete. It will be due on March 5th. And during your consultancies, you'll have an opportunity to ask the person you meet with any questions you may have. It is also a document you may need to send to multiple people in your district to make sure you have the right campus information. But again, we will give you detailed directions and provide that support and consultancy, as well as additional support as needed. Moving into the next step is just finalizing that pilot unit. So if you, I'm going to talk about those recommended versus other units that you can select, and then backwards planning to select your start date. So depending on the length of the unit you are selecting, it's important to make sure that you have time to do so, along with, depending on the grade level, when different assessments are and the end of your school year. There is a list of the recommended units are actually on the Texas Home Learning page, and I can help direct you there in just a minute, but it is on that CRIMSI page for pilot participants. Another great tool, if you haven't yet selected what you're doing, I want to again just share that the benefit of the recommended unit is having those print materials for you that we would be shipping out to your campus or district, as well as some very specific professional learning to prepare for the lessons and units themselves. However, to allow flexibility depending on where you are, you can select other units that are currently available on Texas Home Learning. So when you go to the Texas Home Learning site, you actually can see on the CRIMSI page a teacher sandbox that allows you to go into each product and see which materials are available and a little bit more detail about them. This CRIMSI sandbox, great resource. You can look at it by the specific grade band and product. You're looking at which units are available for spring. So first they have to be ready. Not everything may be ready in the time for your printing. That's why it's important for that backwards planning. So this is an example of what one would look like on the sandbox. you can see on here that for kinder, there are several units. The one bolded, the third down, is the recommended module, which we would support with printing and shipping. And then again for first grade. The other modules are available from Texas Home Learning for you to use. The biggest benefit for the recommended is really about the printing and the additional professional learning. I will also mention that all of these selected or recommended units were strategically decided upon so that we took a look at what is it that students most need to master by the end of that grade level to be successful in the next grade level, and which units or modules could help to be used during the spring. And so there was strategic decisions in there, and happy to talk more in the consultancies about those. Just a reminder that it does also give you the time required for each of the lessons so that you're able to plan accordingly. Before I jump into there, I see there's a few questions, so let me just pause for a moment and then I'll talk a little bit more about the materials.
Melissa, I've been answering some of them.
Wonderful.
So I'm happy to just give quick overviews of answers. And the main thing we're getting is questions about printing and the recommended unit, which a lot of Melissa just addressed. So just to recap what we've put in the chat, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, but you get access to the printed materials for the recommended unit only. You can still choose to pilot a different unit, but you would just access those materials digitally on the THL website. You can print them local, like you can access those additional materials digitally and take care of printing locally if you want. We're just planning to ship only the recommended unit. I also just want to let you all know in the Google form, we've gotten a good question just around like being able to prepare for the data that's going to be in the form. The form is fairly straightforward in that we need, like, think about it in the way of like what the information we're going to need to send you the material. So we're going to need your shipping contact and address at the school level so we can ship the materials to the school. And then we need the number of teachers and the number of students who need access to the recommended unit in each grade and for each product. So the form really just goes in that order, in that flow. So if you're pulling together that information, that's basically what you just submit through that Google form.
Great. Thanks, Kristen. So talking a little bit more about accessing the materials. So Kristen referenced again about the Google form being important for printing and shipping the recommended units, but everyone needs to have access to the digital materials, and you may be working with digital materials with students who are learning at home and virtually. So in order to do this, you can access using this different platforms depending on what is most relevant to your campus. And I'm going to show you a little bit of how to determine what would be the best way to do that. So we want to make sure that you have, you're able to access the digital materials in the way that fits best. So if you have an LMS and you're working to pull the materials into the LMS, that you have the support and set up for that. If you're you don't have an LMS and you want to use the platform that is actually the publishers, there's a way to do that. So there's many different flexible ways for you to access the THL materials. You do not have to have one or the other. We're going to help support you in having access digitally to the materials. And so part of our data collection is to understand what system are you using and planning to use for digital access. And then we can have additional training to support with the use of those digital materials. And of course, we will have some optional office hours to do some troubleshooting as you're working through the digital access. you can actually learn a little bit more about the digital materials and the different ways that you can access the materials by going again to our texasHomeLearning.org site, / it is with -and -LMS. That would be one way to look at Schoology. But if you go to the actual website, I'll come off here for a minute. On the website to navigate there, yep, it's one of my favorites. So Texas Home Learning, if you look at where it says technology on the navigation bar and I click on technology, and I want to simplify my access right here. Once I've done that, you can see there are tabs for other ways, the different ways you can access the materials digitally. You can use Schoology, which we are currently offering Schoology as an LMS. You still can sign up for that at this point. You can look at what does it mean if there's an other LMS. So if you have something else your district is currently using, or if you want to just access the Texas Home Learning without LMS. And LMS, there are different ways. And so all of this information is there. And as you begin to plan, part of it will be in deciding how you want your campuses, your teachers, and your leaders accessing the digital materials as well as your students. So in some of this, having your students rostering might be important, especially for using some of these other platforms. I would specifically encourage that for programs like Mathia for our 6 through 12 math participants, making sure that you're thinking about that information and beginning to sign up for it. I'm going to go back to our slides. The other, again, just a reminder of print access to materials for the recommended units. We do need to do that confirmation for your materials, and we'll be sending that Google form. For any other units that you may have selected, the campus can print directly on their own from accessing the digital. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, one quick thing. We're getting a couple questions just around whether you can add teachers to the print request. I think what we will do is you can submit your requested units. So like you can say, I want printed units for X numbers of teachers and just put what your request is. We'll compare that against the pilot application to determine if we can accommodate that extra volume. So if you both put in the numbers you want on the printing request for one, and actually if you just send Texas Home Learning an email that's saying like, here's the number of teachers you want to add, that will really help us determine if we can accommodate. So we can't promise, but we can definitely try.
Thanks, Kristen. So once we've gone through this big part of a lot of preparation, which is some of the thinking, making sure we can get digital access, giving us some detailed information, getting ready to do the onboarding training, all of that planning, we're going to move into preparing to launch. And on this part, you're really going to be attending the professional development with publishers. We will be sending out some additional information soon regarding that so that you can, we can make sure that you have the information that you need for how to sign up, when those dates. But again, there's a lot of flexibility in the dates that are coming from publishers that I'm sure there is something that will match your needs. And then we will have some additional office hours that are happening throughout to ensure that you have your questions answered quickly. There's always the Texas Home Learning mailbox, if that's helpful, but we'll begin to add and let you know when those office hours are available. we will have an academic diagnostic and talk a little bit about that for schools in the schools that are interested in the diagnostic. We really would love to work with you so that you're able to see before and after and the impact that the materials had on student learning. And then last, there will be some additional stakeholder communication that TEA can help support with, because it likely is important that you're including your parents and your school board in the information so that they are informed and understand if things are changing from what they're used to. And once we are all prepared for the launch, we've been trained, we're ready, we've internalized our first units, we've prepped for those lessons, then that next stage is really about implementing the unit and sharing feedback throughout. And so you'll be busy teaching those pilots units. You're attending optional office hours that will be available. We're partnering with some of the publishers to make sure you can get specific questions answered on the materials, but also some additional support needs from our end. And as we go, and then we'll have some ongoing professional development to ensure that you are getting the coaching that you need as you're working with maybe a totally different way of approaching teaching that content or skills. And throughout that time, you'll be providing feedback to us through weekly surveys and the actual student results so that we can see how well your students are progressing. Teachers and leaders that are participating in the advanced stipend will also have pilot artifacts and data to send in to us during this time so that we can see a deeper look into the learning that's happening on your campus. And then the last part of our phase is this final feedback, where you'll be asked to attend focus groups to share feedback on how well the instructional materials met the needs of you and your students and student achievement. You'll have the ability to give us some additional feedback on the supports that were provided and what was helpful in preparing you. And then we'll have these discussions about deciding on adoption for a full year. So you're investing a lot of time and energy in the next few months and really thinking about, is this instructional materials that will support our students moving forward and meet the needs that we're seeing in that particular content and grade level, and even consider expanding beyond either teachers, grade levels, or products during that time. And then at that end portion, we will be paying out the stipends for participating teachers and coaches. And we'll have some additional information on the stipends coming out over the time period, but just a reminder of when that will happen. Going back to that calendar to give you a comprehensive view of what'll be happening in the next few weeks. Again, we'll be sharing out these slides so you can look at it in greater detail. There are a few things happening in the next 3 weeks, and then you will have time to prepare before you launch your pilot unit. Again, these are, as far as the piloting dates, you may decide a little bit different dates. This is just giving you a range to consider and how you might prepare for it. You may have a different date in mind, and that's okay. You'll just be sharing that with us. Before I jump into just this action consultancy calls, are there any additional questions that are coming up, Kristen, that maybe we should address? I am getting a lot of folks interested in just potentially changing who they're adding, who they're not adding. Again, I would say send us a note for changes that you want to make
we'll do our best to accommodate. And if you have specific questions like that you want to bring up in the consultancy, that's also something we can help work through. I've answered most of them. I think the other thing that I would just want to add is if there's certain thoughts on your mind that either we haven't answered, which I think many of you all have already been doing, type them in the chat, let us know, and that way we can come extra prepared to support you in the consultancy sessions. So if there's things in the chat, whether it be concerns your teachers have or something that you still don't quite understand, or an area where you're struggling with a planning decision, anything like that, feel free to either send us a message privately in the chat or send it to everyone. We'll just take that into consideration when we're planning so we can do the problem solving as much as possible.
Thank you. So as a reminder, we know that you have very specific district and campus needs, and having these individual consultancy calls in the next few weeks will be important for you to have the information you need, the questions answered. So if you haven't already registered, we can send a follow-up. It was in the acceptance email, and those consultancies are happening over the next few weeks. This will allow for you to just understand, ask your questions about benefits and concerns, make sure you have all the key information. We'll be additionally in the next week sharing out some the professional learning calendar and how to sign up and prepare. And then just really about asking the questions that you have specific to the needs of your students, teachers, and leaders. And then throughout that, just a reminder for the consultancy, it is only a 30-minute call. So having the district or that campus lead present there is really important. You can have other participants are welcome to come, but again, it is a 30-minute consultancy. If additional time is needed, we can plan that, but making sure that we're using that time to answer the most urgent questions as you move forward.
A couple quick questions that are still coming through that I can provide some additional context on. One question is, can we pick different start dates for different schools and different products? I think the answer generally is yes. You can pick the start date that makes the most sense for you. One of the tools we're creating is just a list of all of the products and all of the unit lengths for the recommended unit, and showing you kind of the latest date we would recommend you starting so that you can make sure you get through the unit by the end of the year. So what we'll try to do is just make that really clear so that you are looking at and planning for leaving the right amount of time to do that full unit. Trying to add maybe a couple days of cushion, given we know we have the test and, the last day of school, you're probably not, wrapping things up in that way. So we'll send that out. I have gotten another question just about professional development and how leaders can support teachers as they go through that process. So a couple quick things on this. The professional development orientations that we're going through, both onboarding orientations and the ongoing professional development, they are designed for both school leaders, district leaders, and teachers. So everyone's required to go through that mandatory professional development just to make so that we can make sure everyone's on the same page with the information that's available, how to use the materials, how they're designed. All of these will be live virtual sessions. So if you would like to coordinate a way for your teachers to be working together through those or participating together in that way, I think that's a great opportunity. And then, of course, in between some of those sessions, working directly with teachers can be really helpful. But part of why I say this is we will have, if you are a leader or a district leader participating, we will have like a separate session specifically designed for you that will hopefully best help you support your teachers through the course of the product. We have a question, could PD be done in PLCs? We haven't quite shared this out yet, but what we will have is by product, we will have the PD options that you can sign up for. And we're trying to have at least 2 different options, 2 different like cohorts for you to be able to choose between. One of which is like a weekend day, given that we know some people don't want to be doing this during the school day. The other of which is a series of after school sessions. So for us, it was really hard to figure out how to offer the PD in the context of PLCs during the school day, just because everyone would have a different time. And we're pulling a cohort together across districts so that they can be focused, we can do the PD on the specific products or units and or grade levels. So we are trying to give you some flexibility and option choices, but I think it would be hard to do it on your own schedule in the context of a PLC. At least for the onboarding training. So at least for the ramp up training that will happen just like right before you start the product on day 1. What person, we have a couple, so what person in the district fills out the stuff you just showed us? I think you might be talking about the consultancy there. We opened up the CRIMSI pilot application to focus, like you could apply as a district or you could apply at the school. So we really leave this up to you to be thinking about what are the right people to join. If you only applied as a school, it likely just makes sense to be the person who's somewhat like the lead for that school and thinking through how to make sure all of the kind of pilot activity checklist stuff is taken care of. If you are applying from the district, or if you applied as a district, it's likely that same person at the district level who's has all the connection points with the different schools, and you may want to invite your one school lead as well. So I think part of this is just a meeting to support you in planning and getting everything off the ground. And so it's a little bit of a non-answer, but we really do, I think you all might be able to make the best determination on who from your district and or school should be the right person to be supporting there. And again, I think it's going back to that checklist to say, how can we help you make sure all of these things in the checklist are taken care of, and where can we help solve for barriers and or questions that you have along the way.
So I know Kristen's looking at some more questions. We will be sending this out because it was a lot of information and guiding you throughout the process. So I just want to share that will be available, both the recording and then to be able to see the slides. We're going to jump into continuing to do some Q&A right now to make sure that we're able to answer those questions. Just a couple things to remind you. If you go to the texashomeLearning.org/CRIMSI or /CRIMSI, that is a really great place to find those recommended units, to take a look at additional information. And then at Texas Home Learning, you can also look at the technology in the next navigation bar to think about how you will access digitally. All questions can be sent to Texas Home Learning at tea.texas.gov, and we'll be working to answer those as quickly as possible. I'm going to go back to Kristen and I answering some questions as they come in.
The question about who fills out the form was actually about the Google form. So I would say the reminder is that the Google form is intended to be filled out at the campus level, because we want to be able to ship to you directly to your campus. And so we're trying to remove any of the logistics and distribution barriers for districts. So we recommend filling it out at the campus level. If for some reason you want, that doesn't work for you, just send us a note. We'll try to work through that. But the goal was to get it at the campus level because we just want to make sure that we have the shipping information to send directly to those teachers.
Kristen, if I can build on that, there were a few folks who mentioned that it's district policy that nothing is shipped to the school site, and in those cases, you would fill it out at the district level.
Yeah, if form, I'm just trying to make sure the form, yeah, it's
Just
in a
put it in
scenario.
the district shipping address would be fine.
Yeah. We will send a follow-up email with a couple of the big things we've talked about. We'll send this presentation. We will send the Google form that we showed you. We will send direct links to the specific spots on the Texas Home Learning website where you can find things like technology access, things like the teacher sandbox. Am I missing anything?
The recommended units.
Yep, we'll send the recommended unit. So really, we will try to send a list of everything that we've talked about here after this. And I know Melissa touched on this a little bit, but we will try to get a weekly cadence going, just like a weekly newsletter update that tells you, here's any new information, here's any upcoming deadlines, here's, you know, things to be continuously thinking about. For example, like updated FAQs that we start to get. So we will push that out, which reminds me, Melissa, we could probably also just include a link where people could sign up to get added to that email list if you want multiple people and or if you want all your teachers on it, if you want that sort of thing on it. So we can look into that as well. And that way we can just try to make sure we're maximizing communication and being as clear as possible to support you in this process. We'll also include the consultancy planning sign-up links. It was in the original acceptance email if you want to go find it, but we'll include it again in the follow-up.
Someone asked, do I have to fill out the form if we're not using the recommended units? Actually, if you could, it will be a very quick form, or you can send us an email at Texas Home Learning. That way we can mark that so we're not reaching back out to you. So you could send us an email there.
We're getting a little bit of a couple questions just around onboarding. So what we are working on is just a way for you all to see the onboarding options by product. And with that, we'll include a way for you all to register directly on the, like for your onboarding sessions. So that is coming soon. And we will be providing that information soon, just so you can start signing up and looking at the time, holding that time for your teachers and your leaders.
So there's a question about to the primary district contact. Yes, we'll be sending primary district contact, but I also have all the attendees here. And so if you're here today, you will receive a follow-up email thanking you for attending with all this information.
We have a call just around whether consultancy calls should be set up by the campus or the district level. For that, I would say you would only need to set up one if you feel like one will help you kind of walk through the planning for all your campuses. If you really do feel like you have a bunch of very unique needs for a particular campus instead of at the district level, we could try to set up two. We could try to set them up differently. So I would just say try to think about the questions that you have to kind of work through some of these big areas, which are really accessing materials, getting signed up for your PD, making sure you have clarity around which teachers, which unit, what your start date is. So just plan for the consultancies in the way that help you the most. Yes, you can also complete the shipping form. If you are the district, you can complete the shipping form on behalf of the campus. So, I mean, we are really just going to be delivering based on what you all submit in your shipping form. That's where we're going to be sending stuff. So we're trusting that whoever fills it out is putting in where that they want it to go. And then from that point, the receiver can help ensure that it gets to the specific teacher. So whether you want it shipped to the district and then you want to take on getting it to the individual teachers, or whether you want it shipped to the schools, and then it's there for the teachers to get their materials. We can do either way. Just put what you need in the form.
There is a question about if new students arrive after you send us the numbers. If this is something that you're concerned about, think about the numbers of if you need like some additional. You also can print anything from Texas Home Learning, so it isn't we could help you think through that if you have some numbers issues after we've shipped the printing.
A couple questions about the form access. We will be emailing the form at the end of this call, after this call.
So that's the end of our presentation. We're going to remain on here because it's 4 o'clock. So we have reserved some time for our team to stay on and continue to answer any questions that you may have. But if you have the answers you needed for today, thank you. We'll be sending the information, recordings, slides, so you have access to go back and review. Appreciate your time on this Friday afternoon. Hope you enjoy, for some of you, a long weekend. Stay warm, and please continue to email us with your questions, and we look forward to continuing to work with you throughout the rest of the spring. Thank you for joining today.
Got a happy Valentine's Day.
Love it. Oh yeah, forgot. Not doing well on that.
Yeah.
Too many things CRIMSI for me to think about.
Stay warm.